Welcome back to the Red Dice Diaries, and in this video we're going to be asking the RPG question: can technology work well with tabletop RPGs? Where does it work well? Where does it fail? And how can it be used to make your life easier? This was a question sent to me by Steve Uden, so again thank you very much, Steve. Now, although I don't tend to use a massive amount of technology in my own games beyond Google Plus Hangouts and the occasional dice roller app, I think that technology does have a positive role to play in RPGs, and that the use of technology in RPGs is only going to increase in the future. As a certain base level of technology is becoming more commonplace amongst the majorities of people, for instance, most people now having a smart or a mobile phone, and the use of certain technology like mobile apps, etc., becomes more a part of everyday life, people are inevitably going to find a use for it in their recreational hobbies, including RPGs. A lot of people have exposure to computer online RPGs or older computer games that resemble RPGs, and numerous tabletop games have made attempts over the years, with varying degrees of success, to import concepts from these computer games, these MMORPGs, to tabletop role-playing. With younger generations becoming more tech savvy and growing up in a world where computers are a part of everyday life, if tabletop games want to attract new blood and gamers to the hobby, then they're going to have to adapt to survive in the changing entertainment media culture that's developing in the world. So, how do I find technology useful in RPGs? Well, there's a few ways that I find it useful. For instance, dice apps. These are great. I've just started using them myself, and it's very useful if you don't want to carry around a big bulging sack of dice, and they're normally installable on a smartphone, very easy to use. Creating character sheets and handouts is often easier using a computer. There's nothing wrong with doing them manually. However, if you're looking for multiple copies of a handout, or as I say, you want to create a spreadsheet, it's often easier to lay them out for your character sheets, etc., on a computer rather than doing them manually. You can also access the internet to pull up image searches, and these are easy to find on Google or DeviantArt and can be used to reinforce the descriptions of locations, NPCs, etc. And this is something I often use within my own games. You can also use them to create electronic maps or game grids. Now, I tend not to use miniatures, whether actual models or virtual versions, myself very much in RPGs, but for those who do, an electronic version can prevent the necessity to carry around a big case full of miniatures and could be a very useful space saver, as it were. You can also use technology to store game notes and session plans. I myself use a TiddlyWiki, which is a small version of sort of a Wikipedia style program which is saved on your hard drive to store my campaign notes, but there's other software such as MS OneNote and Evernote and numerous others that can also be used to enable storing and accessing of game notes. And this is handy because, again, it saves you space. You don't have to have a big bulging folder full of session notes, and it can also make it easier to search and cross-reference your notes. You can also use technology to organise session times. For instance, if all of your players use social media, then it can be far easier to create a Facebook or a Google Plus event to alert them of a game than by attempting to contact them individually via phone or some other means. And they can obviously use the same means to contact yourself if they have any problems attending, etc. You can also attach additional material for them to read between sessions, images for them to look at, a story so far outline and other such things to the group, and your players can have a look at them as their schedule allows. Technology can also play a role in running the game, and for games that take place online there are a number of different solutions such as Skype and Google Plus Hangouts, to name just two, that enable groups from across the globe to game with each other. And this is very good because it expands your potential pool of players and GMs that each person has access to. And most of them also allow a session to be recorded. And this means that it can be shared with others, and also it can be watched back to help with note-taking, etc. And this is something I do for my own Serpents 4 game. It takes a little bit of extra time, but the results are far more accurate, and I'm not trying to frantically scrabble down notes during a session. I can just concentrate on running the actual session. So, what are some of the potential problems with technology in RPGs? Well, any technology that relies on players accessing it on their own assumes that they have the necessary equipment to do so and the appropriate level of tech savvy to know how to do that. Most homes nowadays have a computer and some form of internet access, so you're normally okay with text and basic images, but more complicated movie clips, animations and other things may require hardware that some of your players may just not have access to, and it's always best to check this before you upload anything particularly complex. There's no good you putting a Photoshop file, for instance, a PSD file, on your Facebook group, an image for people to look at, if most of them don't have Photoshop. It'd be far easier just to quickly check and save that image in a different format. And this is always something it's worth finding out beforehand, rather than turning up to the session and only then finding out that people haven't been able to see your masterpiece or your handout. There's also the matter of, if you have to spend a long time each session talking your players through the technical side of things, then it can take away from the actual session time, and it can leave people feeling very unenthused or frustrated. Hardware problems can also cause your session to stall or be postponed. As with one of my Serpents 4 games, we ended up having to postpone it because there was some sort of update being run on Google Plus Hangouts, and we could not keep a stable connection for love nor money, and this can be quite irritating and annoying. People can also sometimes be distracted by the temptation to fiddle with phones, laptops, etc., and this can also bring people out of the game and result in them not paying attention to what's going on. The technology can actually distract from the roleplay, with people getting more absorbed by the actual process of working the technology, moving their virtual miniatures, laying out the maps, etc., rather than concentrating on what is important, which is obviously the actual roleplay. Some of the software solutions, creating game grids, writing up notes from the videos, etc., all add to the prep time that a game takes up, and this may be a problem for pushed or time limited GMs, and it's up to each individual GM and group to make their mind up as to what is an appropriate amount of time to spend on prep. After all, if something's making your life a hell of a lot easier and it only takes a few extra minutes, a few extra hours, and you've got that time, it may well be worth doing. However, if you're extremely pushed for time, or it's taking far longer than you're willing to spend, then perhaps that particular solution is not for you and you should look for an alternative. So my verdict on the use of technology in RPGs, my opinion, is that technology does have a very valid and valuable place within RPGs, but that place is to support the creation of an enjoyable and immersive game, rather than to take centre stage itself. The worlds and the characters created in the imagination of the players and the GM should always be the stars of the show. There are numerous tools, both technological and manual, and by that I mean like notepads, index cards, sticky labels, whatever you want, that can be used to solve prep and game running issues. We shouldn't assume that just because a solution is a more technological one that it is automatically better, but by the same token we shouldn't assume that the old manual methods are always the best. Take a look at the options available to you, try some out and see what suits yourself and your group best, and then go with that, whether it's writing everything down in an A5 notebook, whether it's storing it in a wiki online or one of the other campaign management tools out there. It's whatever suits you and your group best. And always remember, it's the fiction that you create with your group that is important. All of the aids, the tools in existence, whether electronic or manual, can't make a good game. Yourself and your players do that. What these tools can do is they can ease the GM's burden a little if used correctly, and they can allow you more time and allow you to focus more of your creative energies on what is really important in the game, and that's creating an immersive and enjoyable experience for yourself and your players. So that's my opinion on the role of technology within RPGs. I hope that if you've liked this video, you'll click on like and subscribe to the channel down below. We put out new videos every Wednesday. If you have any comments on this or the role of technology within RPGs, please either put it in the comments box below or hit me up in the Google Plus links. And until I see you next time, I look forward to reading what you've written. Take care.